Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by Mac Stadium, Linode, and Collide. I'm John Voorhees, and with me, as always, is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I am about as good as I get because I just finished, just days ago, my Catalina review. It's, Catalina's not out, but when Apple tells you Catalina's coming in October, you kind of have to be ready by October 1st. So I spent a very long weekend last weekend writing and editing, and it's basically ready to go. So I don't know. I'm ready to move on, and I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Do you know how much time you spent on this review?
I do. It was exactly, as of yesterday, it was exactly 69 hours.
Nice.
Yes. It's very nice, but I've since worked on it a little bit more today, so it's probably at around 72 at this point.
Okay, well, that's a pretty big project for you. But I guess you're the person putting the Mac in Mac Stories these days. So
that should be my Twitter bio, I think.
I've been using yes, you should. I've been using Catalina actually since beta 2, which is surprising coming from me.
It is,
and I feel like I know nothing about it. So I'm right now in the process of reading your review. And hopefully I will be done by the time Catalina is out. So far, what I've seen has really been excellent. You know what you're talking about. You know how these reviews are done. You've been doing macOS reviews on Mac Stories for a few years at this point. So what I'm saying is, I guess if you're reading Mac Stories and you still care about the Mac, you should read John's review because he really cares about it, because it's in-depth analysis. I know that he's talking about in the review, he's discussing Catalyst a bunch. So this should be interesting. I'm looking forward to progressing through the story myself.
Yeah, I've got previews of a bunch of Catalyst apps that I've been using, and there's some really interesting stuff coming. So definitely check it out for that, as well as all the other things, including the breakup of iTunes, which to me is a fascinating topic. So there's a lot in the review about that as well.
Perfect. So today's topic is I'm guessing the result of I wouldn't call it an initiative, but more of like a soft-spoken desire from the both of us to try and do more weird and interesting and fun and new topics. Because we've been talking about iOS 13 and app updates and all, iTunes and Catalyst for a while now, and we kind of want to switch it up a little. It's a new season. It's time to talk about something new. And boy, does John have something new to discuss.
I do.
What is this?
I do. And I really struggled with how to describe what this is, and I came up with building a media iPod Touch,
which makes no sense in 2019.
I know. Well, all right. So just a little backstory. I have an iPod Touch. It's the latest generation one. It's blue. I recently dropped it on the floor, and the screen freaked out. I took it into Apple. It was still under hardware warranty, and despite dropping it, I didn't do any visible damage to it, so they replaced it. So I have basically a brand new iPod Touch, and I use this primarily as a way to install store versions of apps that I'm about to review, and I've got the beta on my regular phone. So if there's a particular app where I really feel like I want to compare side by side how things were done before and after an update, and that's usually a design type of comparison, I'll use the iPod Touch. I've got an old, I guess it's a 6S Plus in my drawer, but I like using this little iPod Touch to do that a lot too. But I don't do that a lot, so I have this iPod Touch and I'm not really doing much with it. And I thought, you know what? This actually could potentially be a device that could sit on the table, the coffee table in front of the couch while we're watching TV, and maybe we could use it to find out what we want to watch on TV that night, maybe get more information about the movies we're watching, or figure out which service something's streaming on, all that kind of stuff. So I've been thinking about taking this iPod Touch and transforming it into kind of a media helper device. Yeah, so
for the whole family, not just for
the
you?
whole family, yes. So this is going to be a very different device. It's not going to be tied into my messages necessarily, or Twitter, or anything like that. It's going to be focused almost solely on media apps.
Okay. So I have so many questions. So before we talk about the media apps and your setup, describe the actual context. So this device will be in the living room,
Right.
just on a coffee table, I suppose, and it'll be like, how do you keep it charged? Do you have
All
like
right. That's one of the big problems.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, hardware wise, the touch has some issues. First of all, the battery really just doesn't last very long. It's such a small and thin device. And really, when you've got something that's going to like sit on a table in the living room for when you're watching TV, it would be ideal if the thing lasted for several days between charges, but that's not possible, especially since the only way to charge it is through the lightning connector. And what I really, really, really would like is Qi charging on an iPod Touch, because then I could have, especially I think it was OtterBox not that long ago. I'm not a big fan of OtterBox cases, by the way, but they came out with this thing, which is like a Qi charger rechargeable battery pack. Do you remember seeing this? It was like maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So you charge these up, and they look like coasters almost. You put them on a table, and then you can charge things with them. And I thought, well, that's a strange thing to have. But the reality is, it's actually pretty nice, because in this situation, if I was able to Qi charge a touch, I would have one of these that would only have to charge every, I don't know, maybe once a week or something. And then I would put the touch down and have it charged right there. But I don't have that option. So it's a lightning connector. So I have not figured out the best way to handle that, because the battery, as I said, doesn't last very long. And as a result, I'll either need to plug it in. We have a little area in the kitchen where everybody kind of charges their phones during the evening. And I could just do that, or maybe I'll get an external anchor battery with a short lightning cable and plug it into that, like in the evening when we go up to bed. Just kind of plug it in. It'll be good for till the next day, because you could charge an iPod Touch over and over and over on one of those big anchor batteries. Mm-hmm. So that is definitely an issue. I think the other issue is, what's interesting to me, the Touch does not have low battery mode.
Yeah, I was about to ask. Oh, it does not. Okay.
No, it doesn't. So what I did is I turned the brightness down a bit in order to try to extend the battery life, but it really needs to be charged pretty much every day. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Mac Stadium, the only provider of enterprise-class Apple Mac infrastructure as a service. Did you know that Mac Stories runs entirely on a Mac Mini at Mac Stadium? It does, and it has for years. But that's just one of a ton of different ways that you can use the services that are offered by Mac Stadium. And today I want to tell you about one that's brand new, that's going to really, I think, appeal particularly to the developers in the audience. But I have another special deal to tell you about too that I'll get to in a minute that I think everybody will want to hear too, so stick around. If you make a Mac app or an iOS app, you know that you need to build it on Mac OS running on Mac hardware. And unfortunately for a lot of Mac dev teams, that means they're stuck using their own in-house hardware, whether that's Mac Pros or stacks of Mac Minis crammed under somebody's desk. And here's the thing, though, it doesn't really have to be that way, because Mac Stadium has solved this problem by making Mac private clouds available in enterprise-grade data centers around the world. It's like AWS, Azure, or GCP, but for Mac hardware. And recently, Mac Stadium announced Orca, that's Orca with a K, which stands for Orchestration with Kubernetes on Apple. Orca allows Apple OS development teams to use container technologies like Docker and Kubernetes the same way their non-Apple peers do. Orca takes a standard macOS VM, puts it inside a Docker container, and then uses Kubernetes to orchestrate everything, all on Mac hardware. It sounds strange, but it's also really intriguing, because here's the thing. Mac Stadium has tested this and found that it performed nearly 30% faster than other virtualization platforms while they were doing their beta. To learn more about what this is all about, head on over to macstadium.com/appstories to get started with an Orca private cloud. And whether or not you're a developer, having a remote Mac server like the one we use at Mac Stories opens up a ton of interesting automation and other possibilities. And right now, you can get half off your first 2 months of a new Mac Mini subscription with the code app stories at checkout. Again, that's macstadium.com/app stories to get started with Orca and use the code app stories to get 50% off your first 2 months of a Mac Mini subscription. Our thanks to Mac Stadium for their support of the show.
Okay. More questions. Do you use family sharing on iOS?
We do. We have family sharing set up. So that's, we're all set there, I guess.
Okay. And have you set up multiple profiles on the Apple TV?
Yes. So far, it's just me and Jennifer. And we have not used it a lot since the update to tvOS, but I'm planning to because I don't want all the shows she watched polluting my recommendations, basically. So I'll see if I can get her to actually do that. But yeah, we're kind of moving in that direction, although I can't say that we've spent much time with it yet.
Okay. So I guess what I want to know is the primary functionalities for this device. So I'm looking at, you've sent me an image of the home screen of this iPod Touch. First of all, it is extremely small. I cannot believe the icons are so close to each other.
I know.
I can only imagine how tiny the thing is. And what I'm seeing here is a vast assortment of apps for TV, music. Can you go over what's the ideal? Like this iPod Touch is lying there. You realize, oh, okay, I want to watch an episode of my favorite TV show. What do? You pick up the iPod Touch and then what?
So I think the initial thought behind this was, all right, you know what? The Apple TV remote is not the best. That's pretty much a given. So why don't I have this iPod Touch up there so I can use, and I have this in the dock, I have the Apple TV remote app. Okay. So that is available, and that is one of the apps that I expect will be used regularly. And, it's worth noting for context that we watch most of our TV and movies through Apple TV and play music. So, it's not like I necessarily need this to control a lot of other things. I need it to control an Apple TV. So that is kind of the baseline, is using the Apple TV remote. But I also want to be able to figure out where something's streaming. So we've got Just Watch, which we've talked about, I think, in the past. Just Watch is an app that lets you search for any kind of content, whether it's movies or television shows, and shows you whether they're streaming on Netflix, Prime Video, Hulu, that sort of thing. That's handy to have, although hopefully the Apple TV app will make that less necessary over time.
I had completely forgotten about this app. Do you know if it works internationally?
No, it does. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Because you know what? When they were doing they're doing the Disney Plus, they're doing a preview in the Netherlands, and Just Watch already has that there. So if you were switching your locale to the Netherlands, you'd be able to search that already, because they got in contact with me and told me that they have that all in the app already. So yes, it works all over the place, because I think they're based in France.
Yeah, I'm looking now. It picked up Italy right away. So that's very nice.
That's my favorite app for figuring out where something is streaming. Or, it's also good because you can figure out what the lowest price is to rent something, if, because you can see maybe it's cheaper on Amazon or Apple TV or whatever it happens to be. So that app is there. Got IMDb, because that's just, look up a particular show, a particular actor, that sort of thing, learn a little more about it. And then I've got a lot of tracking apps that I've got in this screenshot, because, you want to figure out which shows you want to watch and where you are in the season, whether you're binging this or that. You can use something like iShow TV. I'm pretty happy so far with TV Forecast, which is coming from Matt Comey. I can talk about this a little bit. It's in beta right now.
Okay.
But his app, he has a website for it, and I'll link it in the show notes. And it's just very well designed. It does the typical stuff any TV tracker does, where you can kind of view seasons, search for things, check off what you've watched, figure out what you haven't watched. That's definitely something I want to use for watching television. Do
you know if it works with Tracked.tv, the sync service?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it does yet, Federico, but I've enjoyed using it so far, and I'm going to try to... I don't know. We'll see. It's kind of the jury's out on whether that becomes my TV tracker. Right now, I'm using iShow's TV,
So
which
you're using iShows. Okay.
yeah, that's been around for a while. I mean, I used to use Couchy. Remember Couchy?
I remember Couchy. I loved Couchy. It had the perfect calendar view. Somebody someday will do a new version of a TV. We'll do a new TV tracker that has the same calendar view that Couchy used to have. I love the app so much. I'm using Television Time now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I still get tweets and things from readers every now and then about our old Couchy stories, asking what became of Couchy because it was so great. But unfortunately, it's no longer with us.
Television Time, it's called TV Time on the home screen. It's got a shorter title on the home screen. It's fine. I primarily use the shows and to watch sections of the app. So I set it up, it syncs with my Tracked account, and eventually I want to get around to making shortcuts for the Tracked API. It would be fun to be able to search or add a show to my Tracked queue, but I gotta look into that. I'm not sure how it works. I like the to watch section because it's got this very compact list of episodes of your shows that you still need to watch, and you can check them off with a single tap, and each show as a background showing the artwork of that show. What I also like is that you can tap in and open the detail screen, and most episodes you will find links to view the episode on IMDb or Tracked, but also you can show the episode on iTunes. And I do this all the time because I buy TV shows from iTunes. Over the years, I've realized this is by far the easiest way for me to watch a TV show in HD, in English, so in regional language, because I have a US Apple ID, without having to worry about anything else, like using VPNs on to watch something like HBO, for example, because you cannot so here's my totally a tangent. If anybody has any suggestions on how to use a VPN on an Apple TV, please let me know. I've never been able to figure this out. So, before I used to watch HBO on my iPad Pro with a VPN because I needed to pretend that I was in the United States to watch a US network. With iTunes, I can just buy from the iTunes store. I know I'm spending more money, but I guess I'm supporting creators, so that's nice. There's a open in iTunes. That's a button in Television Time, and it takes you right there, and it actually opens modally on top of the screen with the pop-up. There's an iTunes pop-up that opens, and you can just buy with Face ID, and then it shows up in the Apple TV app. So that's very nice. But anyway, sorry, that's Television Time.
I think that's a good point because I know every so often iTunes will have some big sale. And I know a couple of Thanksgivings ago or something, I picked up the entire run of The Office for really cheap. And I mentioned that there was a deal on Twitter, and someone was giving me a hard time because why would you do that? Because it's on Netflix. Well, given where things are with the streaming wars, if you can find a really good deal on something like The Office or any other show that you really enjoy, it makes sense to get it because you don't know where it's going to be next week, and you don't want to have to necessarily subscribe to a new service in order to get that. I think what you need, Federico, is you need a U.S. family sharing plan. You need to have a family in the United States because you know how channels work, right? I mean, Ryan has clued us into this because Ryan knows everything there is to know about Apple TV. And I've subscribed to HBO as a channel because when you did HBO Now, it was really restrictive as to where you could watch. I mean, in terms of geography. And because one of my kids is in Ireland, another one is in California.
Keep talking. Okay.
Hulu is particularly bad about this because Hulu has some kind of deal where if you don't sign in with the same IP address within 2 weeks, they cut you off. So you can't use it outside your home for very long. And so whenever my kids come home, they log back in, so they have at least 2 weeks of Hulu. But now with HBO going to channels, Apple's channels don't have the same restrictions. So my understanding is if you have HBO through channels, you can watch it anywhere in the world without any additional, geolocation type of restrictions. Yeah.
Because it used to be that when channels first came out, you could just use an Apple ID from the US, subscribe, and watch from Italy, and it wouldn't check your network or your location. Then they changed it. So I tried to subscribe to watch Chernobyl a few months ago, and through the channels, and it didn't work. I guess Apple realized, HBO is asking us to check for the IP address, and the channels stopped working for me. So what you're saying is, if I'm part of a family sharing setup that's based in the US, but I'm in Italy, I can still use it as long as somebody in the US is using the channel?
I think so, although what you're saying to me gives me some doubt. But so far, so good with my son who's in Ireland. So I don't know.
Interesting.
We'll see. I think, I think what we need to do in the name of science is run some tests.
I want to remind you that the last time you ran, as you say, some tests with family sharing, you ended up with a fake kid in your settings stuck forever in there.
My fake kid is now 1 year old because that was last summer.
It's still there?
Yes. There's no way to get, I've got 12 more years and then I can get rid of this kid.
Oh my God.
That's how it works.
No.
It's terrible. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Linode. With Linode, you can instantly deploy and manage an SSD server in the Linode cloud. And you can get your server up and running in just seconds with your choice of Linux distro, resources, and node location. It doesn't matter if you're working on your very first server or you're deploying a complex system, Linode are the folks to go to. They offer the fastest hardware and network with outstanding customer support if you ever need help. And it's super easy to launch a Linode cloud server. And their block storage is available in Newark, Fremont, Dallas, Atlanta, Frankfurt, London, and Singapore, and soon to be released in Tokyo. Version 4 of Linode's RESTful API is out of beta and includes an officially supported Python CLI. And right now, Linode is hiring. So if you're interested in learning more of what they're looking for, just go to linode.com/careers. We use Linode at Mac Stories to run things like a bunch of the Slack bots that help us get our work done every single day. And it's not only great and reliable, but it's also a fantastic value. Linode has pricing options to suit everyone. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for just $5 a month, and they offer high memory plans starting with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And Linode have a special offer just for you. As a listener of this show, you can go to linode.com/appstories and use the promo code AppStories2019 to get $20 towards a Linode plan. On the 1 gigabyte of RAM plan, that's like 4 free months. And with a 7-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. So give Linode a try today. Again, that's linode.com/appstories and the promo code AppStories2019 to learn more, sign up, and make the most of that $20 credit. Our thanks to Linode for their support of App Stories. Where should we go from here?
I have many questions. So,
right.
You track TV forecast, iShows TV, Just Watch. I'm looking at your home screen. I see the usual suspects. I see Netflix.
Yep.
I see Apple TV. I see Amazon Prime Video. What's the other icon in the entertainment folder next to Netflix on the left? That's some other streaming service that you're using.
Yeah. That's Hulu.
Oh, it's Hulu. It's Hulu.
It's
okay.
Hulu. Yeah. It's Hulu, and they've got Amazon Prime.
I want to talk about tracking stuff because I see two apps that we've discussed on Mac Stories and App Stories before. One of them is Yonks, and the other is Game Track. So, how are you using Yonks? Because Yonks is used to count to. It's a countdown app. It shows you when will a movie or a video game or some other event occur in the future. How are you using it?
So that's the kind of app that when I go through the movies section of iTunes on the Apple TV, and I'll see, all right, here's a movie that I want to watch, I want to rent, but I don't necessarily want to buy. You know how usually for the first couple of weeks it's buy only, and then it's available for rent, and it'll tell you the date that it's available for rent. That's the kind of thing that I'll immediately put in Yonks. So I'll drop in there that this movie that I want to see is going to be available 2 weeks from now on a Friday to rent, and I'll put that in there. And so it counts down And I can go through there and kind of remind myself, oh yeah, here are the movies that I looked at a week or two ago, and I thought maybe I'd want to watch this, but I don't want to buy it. And now it's available to rent. So that's how I'm using Yonks. And GameTrack is an app that you can use to track games that you're playing, games that you've already completed, games that you want to play. Very similar to any of these tracking apps for TV or movies or whatever. And I've used that for quite a while now, and I'm going to use it on this iPod Touch as a way to kind of remind myself of what's coming up and what I want to play on the Nintendo Switch. Because our main TV is it's like 90% used for the Apple TV and maybe 10% for the Switch. So nice to have that available too for when I want to do that.
So let me ask you, the Nintendo Switch is also connected to the same living room television?
Right.
And some other consoles as well? Or just the Nintendo?
No, just the Nintendo.
Okay. You're also using Apple Arcade, right?
Yep.
Okay. And of course, there's GameTrack does not support Apple Arcade games yet.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Quick question about some other video-related apps that I see in here before we talk about shortcuts and sort of controlling this setup.
Right.
Plex and Infuse. What's going on there?
So I have a Plex server, and I have a digital antenna up in a window in one of my kids.
I know that antenna. I'm familiar with that antenna.
That's in Finn's bedroom, and it's there so that we can get over-the-air TV in HD because we don't have a cable subscription anymore, and we do primarily streaming services. But for some live events, it's nice to have an antenna, and that's things like the Oscars and the Grammys, and I don't know, the Game Awards in December, that sort of thing. And you know about it because you have used that antenna via Plex to watch it from Italy. And yeah, that's what we use it for. I mean, there's a handful of basically what I do. There's so little now that's not available on a streaming service. One of the things I do is I record like the local news and the world news every day, but I only keep it for a day, and I only ever keep one, and I don't watch it very often, but every so often I'll dip in, see what's going on in Chicago or some like the NBC World News and watch that there, because things like Hulu has U.S. national news from the big networks, but it tends to be delayed a day or two, which I really don't like. I mean, if I want to watch the news, I want to watch what's going on today, not what was going on yesterday or the day before. So I'll record those and watch them occasionally. And once in a while, I'll dip in and figure out what's showing on some of these local TV channels and maybe grab a movie or some other sort of thing that I want to watch. I'm not a big sports person, so I don't watch a lot of sports, but that's obviously another good reason to use an antenna to grab local television. But I watch all that via Plex. I've started to, when I find music videos, whether it's live performances or some other sort of music video or whatever it happens to be, to drop those in there too. And then occasionally I'll just go into Plex or Infuse and watch it that way.
Okay. All right. Trailers. Why? This is the Apple Trailers app, right?
Yes, it is.
And it still works? It's still around?
It does. All right. One thing that I should point out about some of the apps on this screen, which we'll put in the show notes, which is you might wonder, why do I have things like Netflix and Prime Video and all these things that are on the Apple TV, which I'm already watching? But if someone in the family is watching a show and you don't want to interrupt what they're watching, but you want to think about what you want to watch next or what you want to watch tomorrow or whenever it happens to be, that's a handy way to kind of go into Netflix, do a search, figure out what you want. Now, Trailers is kind of like that, although I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm just setting this up now. I'm not sure if Trailers will stay in there, because Trailers is also another app that's on the Apple TV. And I kind of like going into the Trailers app now and then and seeing what's coming up in the movie theaters or what's available to rent right now. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Collide. Collide is a new user-focused security Slack app. It messages employees when their security systems aren't as secure as they should be on their Mac, Windows, or Linux device. So, with the Collide app, if a user has a device that isn't complying with security best practices, they'll get a notification with clear instructions on what's wrong, plus step-by-step instructions on how to fix it themselves. They can even confirm in real time that it's all sorted out with the interactive button inside Slack. Collide was designed with user privacy in mind, too. That means a whole bunch of good things, like your users knowing what data is collected about their device, plus information on who can see that data, and the option to look at the full source code of the agent that is running on their device. Collide is already used by hundreds of fast-growing companies that want to level up their device security without locking down their devices. Try Collide's new product for free for 30 days for your whole team. Just go to collide.com. That's KOLIDE.com. Again, collide.com. Our thanks to Collide for their support of App Stories.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual experience of controlling your setup. So I'm assuming that there's two primary areas of control that you need to optimize this iPod Touch for. One is the TV itself, and the other is your HomeKit devices. Because I'm assuming that if you're anything like me, you may have some lights around the television, and maybe you want to dim those lights, maybe you want to turn them a certain color. Are you doing anything like that?
Of course I am, Federico.
Of course you are.
Of course I am.
You probably have too many lights even.
Yes, I do. I do. So this main area where the TV is, unfortunately, I don't have. What is the HDMI technology that lets you turn on the TV? I don't remember.
HDMI CEC.
All right, I do not have that.
Okay. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, it is too bad. My TV is a little bit older, and I am trying. We're in negotiations to get a new television in our household. That that would have that. Would be OLED. Basically, one of those nice LG TVs.
Yeah, the 2019 one.
Yeah, yes, you know exactly the one that I've got my eye on.
Yeah,
and so that is a bit of an issue at the moment. But I do have a Logitech Harmony remote, and that remote controls not just the television, but part of my setup is, you got to realize this all came to be, almost more than 15 years ago, and I have an actual audio video receiver and speakers connected to that, and the TV and all this stuff. And now that's largely unnecessary, because all you really need is a really good TV, a sound bar, or some other kind of HomePod, some kind of speaker system, and your Apple TV, and you're pretty much okay. And I kind of like that simplicity. But what I've got right now is a Logitech Harmony remote that can control all these different components. And fortunately, you can automate that. And I've had in the past shortcuts that will turn on the TV, the receiver, blah, 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 all this stuff at one time and get things ready. So that's one thing that I have the ability to do. It's more than just turning on the Apple TV and the TV, though. And also dimming the lights is usually what I do. So it's usually just dimming the lights and getting everything going at one time.
Okay. You know what this home screen is missing, John?
What is it missing?
Some home screen shortcuts.
It is. I haven't had time to do that, and I've looked through our archive, and there are a few in there that I think would be good for it.
You should consider it, because in iOS 13, and especially 13.1, it is not only possible to wake up a specific Apple TV on your local network, but you can also, since 13.1, you can also open a specific app on your Apple TV.
Yes.
So what you could do is you could put together a nice shortcut that does a bunch of things at once for you. Maybe you could choose from a list of apps to open. Maybe you could also dim the lights or make them a specific color when you're doing this. Like, you could set up a whole routine that prepares your living room for watching TV or watching a movie. You could even do, and there's actually this shortcut you can download, I think, in the Mac Stories archive. You could dim the lights only if it's after sunset. And I put together this shortcut using one of the weather actions. This is a nice workaround. There's no native condition in shortcuts to do things like if it's after sunset. So you sort of have to work your way around it, but you can use the weather actions to get the current sunset time for your location and then dim the lights only if it's after dark. So that could be something that you could set up. I think so. I'm looking at this home screen. I think messages needs to go, settings needs to go, and you gotta have a couple of shortcuts in there.
Well, settings is in there right now because I was still setting this up.
Right.
I mean, this is literally something I started this week. And, who knows? Maybe this will be a story on Mac Stories at some point. But I definitely had an eye towards that at one point. So we'll see. But yeah, it's an evolutionary process, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I think messages needs to go. Settings needs to go. I'm not sure whether the App Store needs to be there. The App Store is there now mainly because I'm trying to see what apps need to be there. I think screen 2, at some point, ideally, what will happen is that the first screen will be nothing but apps that either control the TV directly or provide kind of reference information, like Just Watch about what is streaming where, or IMDb. And then the second page will be Netflix, Prime Video, Hulu, that sort of thing, because I don't need those apps usually because they're in Apple TV, but they are handy to have available to search for what I want to watch next. So kind of separate them between apps that relate to what I'm watching now and apps that relate to things I might want to watch next.
You should also look into restrictions, maybe. Do things like remove certain apps or features from the device that you're not going to use for other things, like, I don't know, maybe you don't want mail. Or you could just delete those apps and simplify, because, of course, this iPod Touch being one of your devices, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of the home screen.
Thanks, Federico.
No, well, it's, I guess, I want to believe that you maybe restored it from a backup, and therefore it still has all of your apps. I want to believe that story. I don't want to think that you went ahead and downloaded 200 apps on this iPod Touch.
No, that story is actually true. I restored it from I restored it from an iPad Mini, and it was the only backup I had that was close to kind of a media centric sort of iOS device. So that's what I did.
Okay, so I'm intrigued by this idea of. Maybe it's not. Maybe in the future you will do an old iPhone instead of an iPod Touch. I don't know, but the idea of having an iOS device that can be used for media controls and automation only, and that always sits there in the living room. This is very intriguing to me. It's sort of similar to how some people use iPads as HomeKit dashboards.
Exactly.
It's sort of like a similar idea, but for media as a smart remote. This is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Touch is that it's designed to be the cheapest product that runs iOS, and things like the lack of a low power mode and lack of Qi charging, that sort of thing is definitely a downside. I could see Apple creating an iPod Touch that just had a few more of these features that would be perfect for this solution, but you might be right. It may be that what I really need is an old iPhone, because I can put it into low power mode, I can Qi charge it, that sort of thing. So, it might even be the kind of thing where you go on to eBay and you grab an inexpensive used iPhone to do nothing but this with the lowest memory possible, because you really don't need, this doesn't require a lot of storage. I'm not storing documents and music and other media on here. All I really need this for is the basic web-connected reference material and that sort of thing. All right, Federico, that is probably a good place to stop. It's going to be a bit of an evolution here. As I said, I really just started contemplating this last weekend, and we're just coming out of our busy season, and it's the sort of thing that is fun to just sit back and figure out exactly what might be possible going forward. We'll see. Maybe we'll check in a few months and see where I stand with my media iPod Touch. I got to come up with a better name for it, though, don't you think?
Yeah, I think maybe you should come up with a nickname. I'm always in favor of nicknames.
Oh,
You should totally.
You like those names, don't you?
Yeah, maybe this will be the, I don't know, the media remote or the iRemote. See, the iRemote is a good name.
Oh, there you go.
The iRemote is a good name. But this should totally be an iPhone, though, John. I'm sorry. This should be an iPhone with Qi charging, and it should be integrated. You should go the extra mile and make it an iPhone and integrate a Qi charger with your furniture. So it can be the ultimate setup.
Jennifer's going to hate you. All right.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm responsible for the ruin of your marriage. Do keep us posted, John. This is very interesting.
All right. Well, that's it for this week, folks. I want to thank our sponsors again. That's Mac Stadium, Linode, and Collide. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is also on Twitter and Instagram. He's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.